Okay, today we're diving into one of history's great travel mysteries. We're going to open the pages of a lost diary from the very twilight of the Roman Empire, a story of incredible faith, unbelievable adventure, and a truly remarkable woman.
Just think about that for a second. We usually picture ancient explorers and writers as men, right? Well, this story completely flips that script. And it all begins not on some dusty road in the desert, but in a quiet library.
So let's set the scene for what is basically a historical detective story. The first clue isn't a person but an object, a single, really enigmatic book. Let's jump ahead to 1884. An Italian scholar, a guy named Gammarini, is digging through a library in Arezzo, Italy, and he stumbles upon this really unique manuscript, a travel diary written in Latin detailing this epic pilgrimage to the Holy Land. But, and this is a big but, the discovery came with a pretty significant catch. You see, the manuscript was just a fragment. The beginning was completely torn off, so there was no title and, more importantly, no author's name. The end was gone too, cutting the story off right in the middle of a sentence. All scholars knew was that it was a first-person account by a super-educated, deeply religious, and incredibly well-traveled woman from the 4th century. The author was a ghost. So this discovery kicks off a massive search for the author's identity. And it turns out the text itself held all the clues they needed to unmask this mysterious traveler.
Just look at this contrast. In the late Roman Empire, a woman of high status was expected to live a pretty restricted life. Our author, though, she didn't just bend those rules, she absolutely shattered them. She traveled for years, she commanded Roman military escorts, and she changed her plans whenever she felt like it. This was clearly someone extraordinary. She seemed modern even to scholars 100 years ago. This French monk, G. Morin, writing back in 1913, was just blown away by her independence. He compared her to a progressive woman of his own time, free from all those societal constraints. She was, and this is no exaggeration, centuries ahead of her era. And her personality just radiates from the pages. She's so curious, always asking local guides and monks, "Hey, what's this valley? What does the Bible say about this place?" She's a total extrovert who makes friends everywhere she goes. She's physically tough, climbing mountains that even intimidated the men with her. And through it all, she has this incredible sense of joy and wonder.
So by matching all these little details in the diary with other historical fragments, like a 7th century letter that mentioned a traveling nun, scholars finally put a name to the ghost. Her name was Egeria, and with her name restored, her full journey could finally be told. Now, Egeria wasn't just a tourist, okay? She wasn't just checking sites off a list. For her, this was a profound spiritual mission, to physically walk through the pages of the scripture she held so dear. And she had a system. Every single time she reached a place mentioned in the Bible, a well where Rebecca drew water, a field where Jacob dreamt, she performed this exact 4-step ritual. It was her way of making the sacred texts come alive, of connecting her own physical body to these holy events from the past. This is where you really see her incredible grit. The climb up Mount Sinai, the place where Moses received the 10 Commandments, was grueling. It was so steep, she had to get off her donkey and do it on foot. But her spiritual drive just completely overrode any physical exhaustion. She was literally fueled by pure purpose. And just listen to her own words describing the view from the top. You can feel the awe in her writing. This wasn't just sightseeing for her. This was a truly transcendent experience, seeing the world from the same viewpoint as the prophets themselves. And she does it again when she climbs Mount Nebo. She stood in the exact spot where Moses stood when God showed him the promised land he would never get to enter. As she read that passage from Deuteronomy out loud, she was literally retracing the final heartbreaking steps of Moses' life. But Egeria's diary is so much more than just one woman's spiritual journey. For historians, it's basically a time machine. Because she wrote with such incredible, meticulous detail, her diary gives us an almost unparalleled snapshot of the late Roman world. It preserves a culture right on the edge of massive change, and she was its most observant witness. The sheer amount of information she recorded is just astounding. Look at what we get from her diary. She gives us priceless details on early Christian worship, the geography of churches that don't even exist anymore, the routines of the very first monks, and even how the Latin language itself was changing. Her diary is an absolute treasure trove for scholars in a dozen different fields.
And it's the specific details that make it so valuable. We learn that church services in Jerusalem actually needed a live translator for a multilingual congregation. We get a step-by-step account of how people prepared for baptism. She describes watching thousands of pilgrims line up to kiss a piece of what they believed was the true cross. I mean, these are details you just can't find anywhere else.
But we have to return to where our story started, with an incomplete manuscript. After more than 3 years on the road, having seen Mesopotamia, Egypt, Palestine, and Sinai, you'd think she'd be ready to go home. But no, not Egeria. In the final section of her diary, written from Constantinople, she's already planning her next trip, a 400-kilometer detour to Ephesus. Her adventurous spirit was just inexhaustible.
And then come the final words of the manuscript that we have today. She's writing to the community of women back home, her sisters, her light, and she asks them to remember her, whether she lives to tell them more stories or not.
And just like that, the ink stops. The pages that describe her trip to Ephesus, her journey home, and whatever other adventures she had, they're simply gone, lost to time.
It leaves us with that same sense of mystery we started with. Egeria's diary gave a voice back to a forgotten woman and a lost world. But it's also a reminder that for every story we manage to recover from history, so many others are still silent, maybe waiting in another dusty library to be discovered. What else did she see? We can only wonder.